On today's episode of Paul is in the shed in the middle of the night, I have an interesting, well, I think it's an interesting project. I got the car weighed. So the Drift Subaru, as it stands, with drive shafts removed, basically no interior, still with the stock seats, it weighs 1,340 kilograms. What I have at my feet here represents 1% of the total weight of the car. This is a giant bash plate which sits on the underside of the Subaru's front subframe. It is made of thick as balls 2mm steel and it weighs 14 kilograms. 1% of the entire weight of the car is right here. This was put on because I had a bit of a habit of crashing the Subaru. And the lowest point on the car is the AN fitting for the oil catch can, which returns to the sump. And I bashed it and it came off trackside and we had to quickly repair it. So this went on. However, now I'm crashing less and I'm interested in saving weight. So I have here, this here yellow fabric is Kevlar. And in the same way that I make my carbon fabrics, I can make a Kevlar coating for this here thing. So I can combine carbon cloth and Kevlar cloth to make a layered carbon Kevlar sump bash guard thing, which will be a fraction of the weight of the current one. So that's my plan. I'm not going to talk through much of what I'm doing here because you've seen me do epoxy resin and carbon fibering before, but this will need a bit of a tidy up and then I can get to it. Well, step one is just to paint it. Step two is to batter it with the honey wax that we've used before, but I'll do that when it's dry. BRB. And now we shall begin the process of adding 5,000 layers of wax to this thing. I have two types of cloth that I'm interested in using here. This is the carbon twill, which I've got various offcuts from a previous project. I don't know if I have any pieces here that are enough to cover the whole part. This one is the closest, this is the biggest, but I still don't think it's quite large enough. So I think I will bust out one of the bigger rolls from the stash. The other one here is this, which is Kevlar or aramid fibre, which is just another woven cloth, but apparently it is good for impact resistance. So this is good for torsional strength and twisting strength, and this is good for impact, which is good if you're making a sump bash guard, because impact damage is likely to be the threat. Anyway, let's cut some shapes and then put some epoxy down. Right, epoxy time. I'm going to put a layer of resin down. I've got about 260 grams of mixture here. I'll put my first layer down just on the metal, and then I'm going to put on my carbon cloth layer first. Well, this is not going to be pretty, it's only going to be functional. So I'll do my best not to screw it up too badly. Just trying to get it to sit well for the first layer. Right, I have mostly not screwed that up. The lines are mostly running parallel. and I've got a good base of resin onto this first layer. That's 260 grams on the first layer. I will leave that to set overnight, and I'm not going to put any more layers on until this one is hardened and has good coverage.
The following day.
First layer's dry. You can see it's got a bit of a crisp to it, but it's still flexible with just one layer of resin, so I'll now get some Kevlar on top of it. Right, that is my Kevlar cloth down. I've got some chopped up carbon fibre in the middle layer there. That's a bit of an experiment, and now I'll put one final layer of the carbon cloth on, and then I am, what is that, 1, 2, 3, 4, that will be 5 layers deep with 600 grams of epoxy resin mixture. Now before I put this last lot of epoxy on, I've rolled out the previous layers, which allows me to see where I have lots of resin, like this part here, and where it's pretty dry, because when I'm rolling it, it isn't soaking through. So that also gives me an idea where I need to add more resin. Right, all good. I now have my 5 layers on here. I've got 600 grams of epoxy resin in total, and it is 20 degrees outside in the shed. So I'll leave this to cure probably for a couple of days. I'll come back and get it after the weekend. This should be a good, solid, functional, but probably not very presentable sump guard. It won't have the sort of polished lacquered finish that the other parts have. This one is just fibre and resin so that it's tough. Hey kids, another day, another change of clothes, and I'm ready to remove this bad boy from its steely mould. There we have it. Now a piece this size, it's got some flexibility to it, but it will be impact resistant. So using the magic of balancing, that is 1.1 kilograms. Excellent. And then I'll trim it up and I'll get a final weight. I'll tell you for free, Kevlar is a pain in the hoop to try and cut. The carbon is fine, but despite being made of mostly the same fibres, the Kevlar is a nightmare. It just seems to bind up and clog up the blades. I swear these are getting blunter as I use them. Final weigh in for this bad boy, 1.03 kilograms. A kilogram. And now we have a carbon Kevlar replacement for the sump guard. It's got some flexibility to it, so I think if I was doing it again, I would try and add maybe some stiffening beams to it, something like that. But for a shed job, in just a couple of hours this time, did it way faster. I'm probably going to have this yellow side presented because that's Kevlar first for catching an impact. The carbon side just looks a little rough really, because some of the paint that I started with has come off onto this panel. So you can see that it's carbon weave, but the surface is not presentable at all. It is just going to be a Kevlar bash plate. But to have just saved almost 12.5 kilograms, thumbs up from me. So next I'll just take that to the warehouse, get it fitted onto the Subaru. I'm not going to show you that because that's boring. What would I do differently next time? I would laminate it all in one session. I bet if I tried, I could get these layers to separate, where I took a break between doing the carbon and then the Kevlar. So I would do it all in one big session so that it had a better chance of bonding. I would probably use an additional layer of cloth too, and I would put in some
some ridges, something like that. I've seen people using simple wooden bars in the resin. And, you put that between your cloth layers, and that adds stiffness. Doesn't, it keeps keeps it lightweight, and it doesn't have to be strong. I wouldn't bother painting that surface first because you can see some of the black has come up. I'll just need to get 3 holes drilled in it, and we'll be good to go for Subaru bash guarding. So there we have it. That is how you, like me, can make a bash guard in your shed. I think I'm now at a stage where I'm ready for vacuum bagging, so if I'm going to do any more carbon fibre or resin projects, I've certainly got boxes and rolls more fibre to do stuff, but I think I would go vacuum bag next time. I think I'm ready for that. Maybe I'll try cloning one of the parts on the RS6, vacuum bag that, and try and get a nice finish on it. But that's it. Thank you for watching. I hope you've all learned something. Look after yourselves, make good decisions, and I'll see you in our next video. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, everyone. Bye.